Hello everybody, Thomas here and welcome back to another video. Today I thought we'd run through 3 jobs and tasks which I like to keep on top of as we go from July into autumn. Hopefully these tasks will be useful and relatable to you, but as always, if there are any other things which you think I've missed, please let me know down in the comments, but let's get into it. Okay then, let's have a look at the first job. The first thing I like to make sure I keep on top of is tying up the tomatoes, because obviously as they grow they get taller and that obviously makes them more top heavy to the point where they could potentially snap, which is obviously not what we want, so we don't want to lose any of our tomatoes. So normally I just use any string I've got. This is probably actually my least favourite thing to do because, as you can see, I'm not very good at cutting string. But eventually we get there and we get some nice piece of string like this. Along with tying them up, it's also important to keep on pruning them regularly just to make sure there isn't too much foliage, because obviously that can block out the light to the tomatoes and obviously we want them to ripen in the sun. So I always make sure to try and take out any of the 45-degree angle stems and also any which are just simply in the way, because obviously we want the tomatoes to ripen and they'll do so quicker when they're in direct sunlight. So now that they're all cleared away, as you can see, we've got a couple of tomatoes starting to appear on this plant, which is good. Growth is normally slower outside, but we still do get a couple. I can begin to tie them up. I will confess that tying these up is not really my forte, mainly because I don't have nails, so it makes it quite difficult. But when I do try and tie them up, I always do a knot around the cane I'm using first before tying around the actual tomato plant. This just makes sure that the stem of the plant isn't being strangled basically, and that means that it's got a bit of room, as you can see there, to grow into if it does decide to thicken up, and obviously prevents it from being suffocated. With that first knot done, I can now move on to the next ones. I tend to do about 2 or 3 per tomato and cane just to make sure it's got plenty of support and will definitely be growing upright rather than, I say, onto the trellis at the back there, which probably wouldn't be too great, but I'd say that one looks much better. I'll then complete that for the next 3 and it's created this nice tidy space at the back of the bed. Obviously it's very important at this time of the year, but another thing that you need to keep on top of is harvesting. So here what I'm about to harvest is some potatoes. Normally I like to start this just by chopping off the top stems. It makes it a bit easier to try and pour out, but this part's always really difficult. This year I tried to grow a few more in bags, just trying to save space, and now that I've been able to compare the yields, I've actually seen that the yields are higher in the grow bags, so maybe that could be the way forward. Also, another problem I often find when I do grow the potatoes in the beds is that I tend to, when using the fork, go straight through the middle of them, which is never what we want. But doing it this way, at least, you can actually search through the soil completely, make sure you don't miss any, and also don't stab any. Normally when I harvest the grow bags, from each plant I tend to try and aim for about 8 or 9 potatoes per plant. I feel that's quite a good average really. Obviously the sizes of them do vary, but that's sort of what I seem to have got here, which is really good. But you know, whenever you're searching through the bag, you always find one little straggler, and managed to here thankfully, so I can add that to the rest of the potatoes I've got and call it a pretty good harvest for today. Now the final task we'll talk about for today is quite an important one, and that is just keeping everything nice and tidy and keeping everything prepared, ready for the next set of sowings. So as you can see here, it almost looks like I've got this sort of piece of wasteland really in between the runner beans and lettuces. It wasn't meant to be like that. There were a couple of lines of radishes in here, but now it's sort of primarily taken over by weeds, to be honest, and a lot of brambles, which I tried to use to deter the cats from digging up the radishes which were in here, but as I previously mentioned in another video, that doesn't seem to work. Although just in general, if you don't have cats, using the brambles are a really good way to deter any slugs. So if that's a problem, which obviously it's a problem we've all faced this year, let's be honest, but if that's something you want to try and tackle, using these brambles to stop slugs and snails is a really good approach. So the job for today then is to get those brambles cleared out and just rake it over nicely, ready to get the next sowings in, potentially for some winter crops, probably. My idea at the minute is to maybe get some spinach in. That's quite a nice one to do at this time of the year. But just to sort of keep it protected until I do manage to get it planted up, I'll just lay this wire mesh over the top of it, and hopefully the cats can't go digging through that. So then I'll just tuck these radishes up over the other side of the mesh, and that's that finished. I do hope you have enjoyed this video. Again, if there is any things which you'd like to see or you think I've missed, please let me know in the comments. But again, I hope you have enjoyed it. Please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and thank you for 100 subscribers. But I'll see you in the next one.